A fragile ceasefire between US and Iran is facing renewed strain, with both sides trading fire multiple times in the last few days. Iran still maintains that it has its chokehold over the Strait of Hormuz, throwing global markets into turmoil and driving up oil prices. An Iranian official compared the influence of the Strait of Hormuz to an atomic bomb. Listen to this.
On the issue of the Strait of Hormuz, for years we neglected this advantage. In reality, it is a capability on the level of an atomic bomb. When you hold a position from which a single decision can affect the entire global economy, that is an extremely great capability. What we have gained through this war, we will by no means give up.
The Iranian government this week launched an agency to oversee transit and administer tolls on ships transiting the strait. US is enforcing a naval blockade to force Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, but reports suggest that may not be enough. A new intelligence assessment suggests that Iran could withstand a US naval blockade for several months, raising questions about Washington's leverage. Now, according to US official, a CIA assessment indicated that Iran would not suffer severe economic pressure from a US blockade of Iranian ports for about another 4 months. Trump administration has denied this. A senior intelligence official called the claims about the CIA analysis false, saying the blockade is inflicting real compounding damage. Meanwhile, hostilities in the region are on a high. On Friday, Iranian media reported sporadic clashes between Iranian forces and US naval vessels in the strait. The US military said it struck 2 Iran-linked vessels attempting to enter an Iranian port, claiming American fighter aircraft disabled the ships and forced them to turn back. And for more on this, we're now being joined live by Dr. Mir Javed Anwar. He's a lecturer of Iranian politics at Reichman University in Israel, a West Asia analyst and co-author of The Nuclear Sphinx of Tehran. Thank you so much, Dr. Javed Anwar, for joining us on the broadcast. Now, the fragile ceasefire between the US and Iran, it appears to be fraying, with both sides accusing each other of repeated violations in recent days. And now, given the current trajectory, does Washington realistically have a viable military option to secure or reopen the Strait of Hormuz, according to you? And this is without triggering a much wider escalation.
The priority of the Trump administration at the moment is to find a diplomatic solution and to avoid the continuation of the war. This is why President Trump has made a new offer to the Iranians, and the Iranians, we are expecting them to respond in the next couple of days. This is the priority of President Trump for now. If that fails, then I think the possibility of renewed conflict is a realistic one, although not definite. I'll explain both. It is realistic because one of the countries that was involved in stopping the recent Operation Freedom on the Persian Gulf, which entailed the US accompanying foreign ships while not allowing Iranian ships to pass from the Strait of Hormuz, was Saudi Arabia. The Saudis convinced the Americans to stop this in order to create a chance for another round of talks. So we are waiting for the Iranians to respond. If the Iranians respond negatively, the Saudis and the Kuwaitis have made clear that for the first time they are going to allow the United States to use their airspace and their territory to launch attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, this is an important development. So it makes it more viable. It's a more viable possibility that there will be renewed attacks, especially because the Saudis stake their reputation on the line. They are giving this round of talks a chance. They convince President Trump that he should try. And if it fails, then they're going to enhance US military capability to attack Iranian installations. That's if Iran says no. However, we also have to take into consideration that that President Trump may not resort to a military attack despite everything, and even if Iran says no, because he's going to meet with Xi Jinping on the 14th and 15th of May. And he knows that the Chinese are also hurting by the closure of Hormuz. So he may wait to see what the Chinese will do, because the Chinese will also want to open it. So he may pressure the Chinese to pressure the Iranians to open the Hormuz without President Trump going to war.
Right, and Dr. Javed Anfir, a recent CIA assessment, it reportedly suggested that Iran may be able to withstand the economic pressure of a US-led blockade on its ports for 4 more months. And it could perhaps be even longer if you're speaking realistically. But if that's the case, how effective can the coercive economic or naval pressure really be in forcing Tehran back to the negotiating table?
It could be if President Trump can withstand another 4 months of the closure. And by that I mean if the US stock market remains unaffected by it. Until now, the US stock market has generally been unaffected by this closure. We saw recent highs on the Nasdaq, and the price of oil has not reached astronomical levels that some people were concerned. As long as he can keep it that way, I think he may be, he may resort, he can do it as long as he can remain 4 months with the Strait of Hormuz closed and all that it entails. But it's not clear whether he will do it, because he has midterms coming up in the U.S. election, and also we have to also look at the fact that the Congress, according to the U.S. Constitution and laws, President Trump only has 60 days to declare war without the permission of the Congress to continue. We have to wait and see how much the Congress will pressure him. But if he decides that he can withstand the consequences, especially if the Persian Gulf countries decide to support the global economy financially and with the export of oil through alternative means, then we may see the United States waiting another 4 months. Time is on America's side if President Trump decides that he is willing to pay the price. But that is something that is very unpredictable, because President Trump is a very mercurial character. He changes his position sometimes from week to week, sometimes even daily. So we have to wait and see. But I really would like to recommend to your viewers to keep a close eye on the upcoming Trump-Xi Jinping summit, because I think President Trump will try to leverage the negative consequences of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz on China in order to get the Chinese to speed up the opening of the Strait of Hormuz by coercing the Iranians to change their position.
Of course, Dr. Javed Anfir will be closely tracking that meet between Trump and Xi Jinping. But coming back to the Strait of Hormuz, what's particularly striking is that Iran's leverage over the strait, it appears to have grown as an unintended consequence of the conflict itself, because Tehran is now tested just how much disruption it can threaten or inflict on global shipping. So having said that, in your view, what do you think it would actually take for Iran to relinquish that leverage? Or has Hormuz now become too valuable, perhaps, as a strategic card for Tehran to ever voluntarily give up?
In terms of how the Iranian leadership sees it, first and foremost, please let me say that the Iranian public wants this conflict over, and they want to deal with the United States now. Even a recent survey from Iran that was published in one of the newspapers, Dunyai Iqtisad, the World of Economy, cited that 56% of Iranians prefer the removal of sanctions as a result of see the removal of sanctions as the priority, not the nuclear program. So most Iranians want this issue over and done with because of inflation. 80% of the income of Iranians is going on food, is going on just accommodation costs. Just think about that. Inflation is rising 5%. But the Iranian leadership is something else. The Iranian leadership has as its priority regime survival, but most importantly, projecting power. What they have now is something that Iran has not had in its recent history. And by that I mean a leverage that can not only impact the region, as its axis of resistance with Hamas and Hezbollah did, but a leverage that can actually impact global economy. Iran has never had this, not under the Shah, not under the current regime, never during its recent history. So this in itself could turn into, he has created a euphoria for the Iranian leadership because of the success, and this may make them more intransigent. But so it may be that they will be unwilling to give it up because of the tremendous leverage that it has had. But I think the longer they wait, they will see that the costs will go up because the international community, Persian Gulf countries, countries such as India and Pakistan, who are also reliant on imports of oil, will see Iran's position as unreasonable. So the longer the Iranians wait and the longer they seem unwilling to negotiate just because of this recent goal, the more it will backfire on them. But they may do so because the leadership has a different agenda to the people of Iran. They want to become regional superpowers. They want to be portrayed as global superpowers. They see the closure of Strait of Hormuz does that. So this victory may turn into a challenge against Iran's own interests in the long term.
Right, Dr. Javed Anfar, we understand that both sides want to deal, but the problem is that both of them have a very different definition of what success and defeat would look like, because they're essentially working with fundamentally incompatible red lines here. Now, having said that, do you think that United States would perhaps have to make concessions to Iran in order for there to be, anything resembling a breakthrough at this moment?
I think everybody has to make concessions. This is why you do negotiations. In Hebrew, we call negotiations masao matan, which means give and take. You have to give and take. I think there are some red lines that President Trump will not cross. One of them is the uranium that is enriched to 60% and it's on Iranian soil. He cannot let that go. That must leave Iran or be diluted or something irreversible, so it cannot be used to make a bomb in the future. President Trump cannot allow Iran to continue controlling the Strait of Hormuz. These are the red lines. I think the Islamic Republic of Iran, against the wishes of the people of Iran and against the wishes of most of the world, will try to maintain its position again regarding the Strait of Hormuz, especially, and the nuclear program. But despite the tremendous achievements of the Islamic Republic through the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's economy is much more weaker and more vulnerable than the US economy. And we can see the inflation numbers. We can see, for example, that there have been 3 million people unemployed as a result of the war. We see that 10 million other Iranians, their businesses have been affected by the closure of the internet, which was a conscious decision by the Islamic Republic of Iran. This situation cannot go on forever. This is why I said in the second question that you asked that it depends on how much President Trump can wait. If he can wait, the Iranians will have to come back to the table because Iran's position, the economy, is far more fragile than the rhetoric of the Revolutionary Guard that rules the country, the elite that has most of the power.
Right. Of course, we'll have to say what and how much is given and taken to bring this conflict to its logical conclusion. But for now, thank you so much, Dr. Javed Anfar, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your insights with us.